Hello, Megalithomaniacs. Welcome to our podcast, our video podcast that we do on YouTube. We've got a very special guest joining us today. He's a good friend of mine. He's called Hugh Evans, and he's the author of The Origin of the Zodiac, Cadir Idris and the Star Maps of Gwynedd. Now, this is a really interesting subject because Hugh has been studying this all his life. He is an aeronautical engineer. He's been involved in business for many years. He also did astrophysics for a year as well. But he's got this lifelong passion for astronomy and astrology to some degree. So we're looking at a discovery he's made, which is based around one of my favorite places, Cadir Idris Mountain in Wales, in the area of Gwynedd or Gwynedd. And this book is a revelation to me because I'm fascinated by the idea of landscape zodiacs, like the Glastonbury zodiac. We have the Kingston zodiac. We have the Nothamsted zodiac. These are basically landscape, huge areas, miles wide, that appear to show kind of constellations, or really the signs of the zodiac on the land, which are kind of been placed there in ancient times, shaped by various features, geomancing, many thousands of years ago. And the traditions really do state that these really did exist. But what Hugh's done, he's applied that to the area around Cadir Idris in North Wales and found that they're not just signs of the zodiac, they're more like constellations that we're seeing mapped out around the entire landscape. And Cadir Idris, which is the home of the giant Idris, or Idris Gower, who was this legendary giant that we talk about in my book that I've done with Jim Vieira, called The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain, is actually the kind of pole of it, the center, the axis mundi of this star map itself. So let's get Hugh talking about this. So thanks for joining me, Hugh. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Hugh. Nice to see you.
So first of all, let's talk about, what is to you, what is a star map? So we can just, if people aren't aware of this, I've tried to explain what a zodiac on the landscape is, but what about a star map, which is something that you feel you've discovered around this area of North Wales?
Well, I think there are many sort of different types of star maps, from the ones you've mentioned already, like the Glastonbury star map, which is perhaps a more spiritual star map. You have star maps that we may be more familiar with at home in atlases or on the internet. And you could even argue that the Nebra sky disk is a star map. And you've done one of Howard Crowhurst did a lecture on your channel about that. But the star map I have found is covers 1,500 to 2,000 square miles, which is over 1 million acres. It is a quarter of Wales and all of the ancient area known as Gwynedd. And it covers the whole of Snowdonia, basically, all the mountains, all the rivers, all the towns, landmarks, ancient monuments, and even down to field names.
That is quite interesting. I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated by that, because what you've also found, and we know this because we went up there. We did a little exploration a few months ago. We were looking at a few sites, a couple of stone circles, and looking at some of the locations that appear to mark this particular kind of area. What fascinates me is that there's megaliths involved, obviously being a megalithomania. I also want to mention that Hugh is going to be coming to Megalithomania on the 7th and 8th of May 2022 in Glastonbury to give a full update of his research. So look out for that. It's going to be one of his first lectures. I believe you're doing another lecture with the lay hunters possibly before that. I think coming up, or maybe that's afterwards.
Late May.
Yes, afterwards. So yes, it's going to be his inaugural lecture. So I look forward to that. So you've got the star map, you've got many ancient sites. I mean, maybe, what sort of was your discovery of this? How was it discovered? What triggered you to kind of realize there was something really going on with this, and it wasn't just a kind of coincidence in the landscape?
Well, there were a sequence of events, really. I've been reading around the subject. I've been interested in the stars all my life, and I went to actually a Megalithomania conference at in November. Where's that? That's the Howard Stern, is it? Or
well, we did the Origins conference,
yeah,
I think, in London. Probably it was online or in London. Yeah,
yeah. And you talked about Qaeda Idris and it being the place where one of the three great astronomers of Britain, Idris, mapped out the stars. So there was a connection there. And I was looking at traveling and visiting some places where my family were from, and I noticed that Qaeda Idris, the mountain, was very close by. And I then started looking at the maps. I read around the subject a little bit. Someone recommended Mike Harris's book, Arwen, to me, which identified the location of the plough on the star maps. And from there, I basically unpicked and unraveled and rediscovered the entire star map. One of the breakthrough points for me was realizing that a few of the rivers in the area were the ecliptic on the star map, which is the path the sun takes apparently against the backdrop of stars above us. But once I found that mapped on the ground, a lot of the constellations started to appear a lot easier. I can show you that now if you like. I could go to Google Earth and show you how I sort of discovered the star map.
Yeah. Let's see some super cool graphics, please, Hugh.
Okay, well, I'm just going to share my screen. So I hope you can see a picture of Great Britain on the screen in front of you. And this just gives you a sense of where the star maps are in relation to the whole of Britain and Europe. So we're just going to zoom in a little bit. Now you can see the top northwest quarter of Wales. This is the ancient land of Gwynedd. And that is the mountain of Qaeda Idris. There's one of the peaks, Panigada.
Yeah.
I think you and I have both been to the lake in the chair at Qaeda Idris.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Wow. So this is such a great, if people don't know this part of Wales, it's absolutely amazing. All around here, you've got numerous standing stones, you've got stone circles, you've got this amazing, obviously the sacred mountain, Cadi Idris. You've got stunning castles all the way up the coast, going up towards Anglesey. There's quite famous sites. Many of them are linked with giants as well, which is something that, which is the Idris connection, really, which kind of fascinates me. So give us some examples. So what can we, the one we can see there, you've got Polaris, you've got Pleiades, you've got the Plough, I believe, on the screen there. So can you zoom into one or two of those, and maybe you could just explain what we're looking at?
So this was one of the start points, was realizing that the Plough was associated with the peaks along the ridge of Cadair Idris, and it's actually referred to in the Book of Enoch in this location. Enoch is Idris, and in the Bible, Enoch went up to be with God, and he in the Book of Enoch it says he went up to see Uriel, and from that point mapped the stars. So this is the point in the center of the star map where Idris mapped the stars from. And this represents the pole star. And as I said a minute ago, my sort of breakthrough notion was that this orange line was the ecliptic. So on the ecliptic, you would expect to see all of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So I would just put them on. There they are. There's the 12 signs of the zodiac, from Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Libra. So all of the mountains, rivers, place names, even down to house names, they reflect the the sign of the zodiac and the features on the land. And you were mentioning a minute ago, Hugh, the ancient monuments. Well, I do have the megalithic portal overlay of Google Earth, and I can show you just by clicking on here all of the ancient scheduled monuments in the star map region. So we've been to some of these, you and I will take them all off because there's rather too many there, but I think we went up to Molte Uchaf, didn't we, together?
That's right. So that, I mean, if people don't know, we'll put an image up of that. That's an amazing, very unique stone circle that almost appears to have 5 sides to it. Yeah, and it's really hard to get to. You got to know how to get there. We had to like park up and, you know, walk up about half, 3/4 of a mile just to get to it. But it's got this very specific geometry as well. So it's a very important site, and it's linked very closely with, you know, the nature of geometry, and the placement in the landscape suggests it was an astrological in this sense, part of the landscape. So yeah, so it's amazing to get up there and realize there's like a connection with your research here.
So you can see this is the constellation Pisces, and from the megalithic portal you can already see a number of scheduled monuments, stone circles. There's a stone circle, and standing stones that mark out the path. There is also a resource from Cadw, which is the Welsh equivalent of English Heritage, and they have also marked out many of the standing stones and other ancient sites. I'll just turn that off. So we have the 12 signs of the zodiac. We can put on the constellations in the center of the star map. They're the ones we see directly above us, and they were the northern circumpolar constellations. So we've already seen the plough there. We have been to Corona Borealis, Hugh. Do you remember going there?
Yes, that's right. The 2 lakes. Yeah.
There's a number of standing stones and stone circles in this area that mark out the constellation.
So what we're seeing here then is, just to clarify, there's on the outer edge, you've got like the constellations as such, how the stars kind of appear, you know, what people think they look like in the sky. Plus you've also got another layer there by the looks of it, which is the kind of star signs. Is that correct?
These are the star signs, which if your star sign is Gemini, for example, these would be the same 12 star signs.
Gotcha.
And these are the other constellations above us, and we also have the southern hemisphere constellations as well.
Not necessarily the ones. So the ones in the middle aren't the star signs as such. They're kind of other.
No, they're just constellations, like the plough. The plough isn't a star sign, but it is a constellation. And the white area represents the Milky Way, crossing from the spiritual plane into the mortal world, which is the middle, and down into the underworld, and leading out towards the west. So and there's Orion.
Yeah,
Sirius.
That's it. So you got that. These are very well known. I mean, this isn't like, you know, if people watching this now, they're going to recognize a lot of these, aren't they?
Yeah, everyone knows Orion in the night sky above us, and the brightest star next to it, Sirius, and that's where they are on the star map of Gwynedd.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So what have you found then that, you know, we've seen, you know, just when you were showing us Pisces there, that it appears like megaliths, standing stones, was it mounds as well, and things mark the route of the shape of these particular
this is the star Sirius, and there's a stone circle that marks its location.
So what we're looking at then, we're looking at, you believe the ancients literally were placing megaliths and stuff like this, ancient sites, to mark the shape of these things. But were they actually shaping the land? Were they like terraforming the land and reshaping hills, so the hills would like move along in a certain way to represent some of what you're showing us here? Or was it more just sites marking natural features?
They used a mixture of techniques. So we are told in the Book of Enoch that Enoch mapped the stars from Coda Idris, and it is fortuitous that the 7 peaks of the plough are marked out by 7 peaks along the ridge of Coda Idris. I mean, you could argue that there are more peaks than 7 along this ridge, and they've just taken 7 that's to refer to the plough.
Well, so let's jump back a sec there, Hugh, because you're saying basically, I think we need to like fill people in on this, is this idea of, you know, you're talking about the Book of Enoch, you know, and so what, in case people aren't aware, that Idris, you know, the name Coda Idris is it's a famous mountain. It's also at the very top is the kind of seat of Idris, or Enoch's throne or chair. And Idris and Enoch are interchangeable. This is why there's this strong connection between Idris and Enoch. If we go back, you know, and look at the Book of Enoch, and I discussed this in my book with Jim Vieira, our latest book on the giants of Stonehenge, and we do a whole section on this. And then we've added actually some of Hugh's research to the book because it was so interesting. And it appears that in the Book of Enoch, he describes being taken to these northerly latitudes by the angels or the watchers. And he's making observations often through these portals. So I know Stonehenge is one contender of the descriptions that were given. You're also able to Robin Heath, and now Hugh's had a look at this as well, to decode the latitude where this could have taken place based upon the lengths of the days and nights and things like this. And it's very close to this. It's around 51 to 53 degrees, 51 to 52 degrees in this area. So, you know, Robin Heath believed it was like Stonehenge, as did the Uriel's Machine book as well. And Hughes kind of realized, I mean, we've all been kind of waking up to this reality that this giant Idris, one of the holy astronomers of Britain, Gwyn ap Nudd being one of the other ones, he was actually possibly a person, and this, or a lineage. It could, you know, in some suggestions, Enoch and Idris is a kind of a given kind of name, like a part of a lineage, rather than an actual like name, like Hugh, for instance. And so, you know, is there evidence that they actually came over here and did this? I mean, I'm quite convinced. I mean, we do a thorough analysis in the book. We must remember also, you know, because what we're talking about, when you're shaping the landscape, building megaliths and altering, you know, the land as such, we're talking about geomancy as well. And in the Quran and the early Muslim literature, Idris is the founder of geomancy as well. So not just an astronomer, but also a geomancer. And as is Enoch. Enoch has all these qualities as well. There's also a connection with Hermes as well, possibly Thoth. You know, they're all the same kind of being, which is manifesting all this amazing, highly advanced astronomy, possibly astrology, and understanding of the land and the landscape. So yeah, just so people are aware, we're jumping in, we were just jumping in saying, yeah, this is in the Book of Enoch. But I think if people understand that there's this really strong possibility that there was some observations carried out by Enoch here, and this could have influenced Idris. I mean, and this whole idea of Idris is really fascinating. So if you've got anything to add to that, Hugh, please do. I've just gone off on one for a moment, but
yes, I've got a few things I could add to that. So this is Coda Idris, and the Coda is a chair, but it also means in the Welsh language a controller. So we have a sense that this was the controlling point for remapping the stars, and even Idris's name has a meaning. Id means Lord, and Rhys, which is the second part of his name, means of the course or chief. So it's almost like the chief planner of the courses. And what they were plotting here were the courses of the planets against the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and they were also plotting the passage of the sun, the moon, and they were checking that everything was right in the heavens.
Yeah, that is pretty intriguing. This is just mind-blowing. So this kind of almost backs up this idea that there was this kind of connection kind of with the Bible lands. I mean, there's a famous mound called the Mound of Idris, not far from Haran, which is 10,000 years old as well. And now they found that even at Göbekli Tepe, possibly at Karahan Tepe, according to Martin Sweatman, that there was an understanding of the astrological signs on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. And so to find the same kind of ideas being present here, possibly with influence coming either way, is really, really interesting. And also, just for those giantologists among you, they did find in the 1600s 2 7-foot tall skeletons at the base of Cadi Idris with hazel rods, i.e., dowsing tools, possibly astronomers' tools as well. So, anyway, what are we looking at here now, Hugh?
I think this was the area where those two giants were found.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it was on a kind of raised area just near this farm.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. So let's have a look at some other constellations here. Then, I mean, I know you were talking about you got all the famous ones here, but I'm interested in this one that we were discussing the other day about this unicorn, because we'll have a look at that in a moment. But because what's interesting to me is that in the landscape in the Glastonbury zodiac, there's been a potential unicorn that's been discovered, which stretches from Somerton all the way to Langport, which is about 10 miles long. And this is clearly, you can clearly see this on maps, and it almost touches, it's on the zodiac's almost on the hind of the unicorn, and it overlays the Girt Dog of Langport as well. And the third eye of the unicorn is Burrow Mump, and the river is the Horn, River Parrot, which heads up north, and it's perfectly east-west. It's perfectly sort of symmetrical, and so that's fascinated us. I mean, my friend David Hatfield and Sean Kern, we've been out exploring. I used to live on the tail of the unicorn at a place called Willow Croft for many years. That's where David and Sean currently live, and so to find that, we were always fascinated by that, but no one's really that interested for some reason. To me, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So can you explain what unicorn you may have found in this area, and what really is the meaning of the unicorn?
Yeah, I was alerted to the prospect of the unicorn being on the star map by someone who left a comment on one of my videos. And then I did a little bit of research, and if you go onto Wiki, it says that the unicorn constellation was brought back to our attention in the sort of the middle 1500s or around that period. But actually, it's been on the star map for thousands of years. So this may well have been the origin of the unicorn constellation. And here it is. It's there. When I wrote my book, I didn't look for the unicorn constellation. I've only found it recently. So it will be detailed in some new work that I'm planning, and there may be a video on it, but I looked for it once I had become aware of it, and it was exactly where it should be on the star maps of Gwynedd. And these mountains here are named to reflect the fact that there is a unicorn here. And they're thousands of years old. These mountains and these field boundaries, they haven't changed for thousands of years.
What you're suggesting then as well with this whole system is that it is a reflection of the night sky. So is it like a mirror of the sky? Is it like a sky mirror, or is it like you would look at it if you were looking at the sky from above on the ground as such?
It is looking at it if you were looking up at it.
Okay.
So it's not a mirror reflection, it's an actual representation. Okay. So if you look up at the night sky and find Taurus, for example, to your left, as you look up the night sky, will be Gemini, and there it is.
Okay.
And underneath Taurus and Gemini is Orion.
So it's pretty. I mean, how accurate do you think it is? I mean, how accurate compared to the night sky? Is it surprised you constantly as you keep making more discoveries?
It's constantly surprised me. I only had an instance just 2 days ago of someone referring me to a place on the star map, and I went to check its meaning, and it's absolutely perfectly placed. It's not accurate or to a scale of miles representing degrees above. So, for example, there's quite a large gap between Taurus here and Aries, and then a shorter gap between Aries and Pisces. So that's not what you see above in the night sky.
So why are you choosing then? Why are you choosing these exact locations for each one? I mean, are there very specific features in the landscape, or is it because of names of places? Is it because of sites marking out the perimeter of these shapes, or is it a combination of all of these?
It's a combination of all of them. It's the hill names. So in the constellation of Aries, we have it talks about rams and sheeps and things like that. If I just put on the megalithic overlay again, these types of ancient sites that are marked out, they are on the star maps and they reflect the star maps themselves. Some of them are named to reflect that. So for example, if you look at my book, this stone circle is represents Sirius, and it's named to represent Sirius.
So what is the name there then? I mean, and I, we're looking at Welsh names, and you're quite up on the Welsh names. I mean, I've had lots of emails and discussions with Hugh about this. That there's a remarkable consistency with the prevalence of the Welsh language, different, not just in Britain, but different parts of the world, and how it appears to have influenced in far.
Let me just refer to my book, so I'm not sort of trying to talk from memory.
And I'll just fill in a couple of things for people. I mean, there's when we're talking about zodiacs, which isn't this, this isn't really the same as the Glastonbury zodiac. Just to put it in context, Anthony Thorley, who's a scholar, he's actually, I think, doing a PhD on the kind of sacredness of landscape zodiacs, believes there are 60 of these in Britain. I know you spoke to Lawrence Main as well, who actually phoned me today, funnily enough, and he's part of the network of lay hunters. He's been researching and looking at these as well, and so we have the Glastonbury one, the Bury St Edmunds, some in Cornwall, even up north, Northumberland, the Pendle one up near Cumbria, and so on and so forth. So if people want to look into that, there is information. I'll put a link to Anthony Thorley's lecture about that he did a few years ago, because it's a compelling idea that, because you have Nazca as well in Peru, which appears to show constellations or astrological signs mapped out on a grand scale. So it's not just in Britain, there's other areas that have this as well. So anyway, we were talking about Sirius here, Hugh.
Yeah, so this stone circle, so Chled is a stone or an axis, but also it can be referred to as stone. Crown is this word here, and it also means broad like a boat, and can mean an ox. So we have this sense of a crown, an ox on a boat, and this is actually the sign for Sirius in the Dendera zodiac.
Okay, so you found a connection with the Ptolemaic zodiac, which the Dendera one is, I believe, which is on display at the temple there in Egypt. But so is this the same kind of concept? And can you expand on that a little bit and give people, if people don't know about this, I mean, if this is based upon that or the other way around?
I believe that this is the original, and I believe that other zodiacs have evolved from this one. This site is determined to be, at the very latest, it's Bronze Age, and that's Cadw Welsh heritage defining a lot of these stone circles as Bronze Age. But you and I have been to a number of these sites, and they are very clearly Stone Age, Neolithic, and they could be older than that. They could be Mesolithic, and if they are Neolithic, then they are certainly predating the Dendera zodiac by quite a long time.
So you think this is a Bronze Age era, sort of what, 1,500 BC, 2000 BC?
No, I think it's a lot older than that.
Okay.
It's at least Neolithic, which would be 2,500 BCE or earlier. I'm still making connections between this site and other sites around the world, including the Lascaux caves in southern France and Göbekli Tepe. Both those sites are extremely ancient.
And there's a connection I remember reading, and we were discussing, with the Mabinogion, which is like one of the old books of the Welsh language, which are hundreds, if not 1,000 years old. What is the connection? Are there kind of, because in there they have kind of astrological kind of hints. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, the Mabinogion, as it had been called from the 1800s, are four main books of ancient British history. There really are the ancient British origin and creation myths. Their name is the Mabinogi, and the events that are mentioned in the Mabinogi, some of them are represented on the ground here on the star maps of Gwynedd. So, for example, in the fourth book of the Mabinogi, there is a character called Hugh Gyfs, and he is involved in a battle, and he dies, and then he is brought back to life. And on the star maps of Gwynedd, he is equivalent to Perseus, and that's the Perseus constellation, there's his sword. And when Hugh dies, he is resurrected or carried away by an eagle, and this is Aquila the eagle. And he's then resurrected and comes back to his normal location. And this represents, in the fourth book of the Mabinogi, some sort of celestial disturbance, because the battle is with another visitor to the universe. And Hugh and his bride, who's called Blodwedd, who represents spring, they are lost, and there may have been some sort of pole shift or something like that that's caused the seasons to alter. And when he's brought back to life, everything is then restored back to its normality. And what I've actually found here in my research around the constellation of Aquila is that in the ancient British tradition, it was probably called the Eagle and the Dead Man as a result of the story in the Mabinogi. And these areas around here to the side of the eagle are named after the dead man. So the names of the features on the ground actually represent the Mabinogi and are probably older than the current Ptolemaic constellations we have. We also have some references to the first Mabinogi down in this area here. There are two mountains that are named after two characters in the first Mabinogi, and this area here represents the underworld on the star maps of Gwynedd, and it is probably a time of great antiquity it's referring to. And this is the Great Ship constellation that is equivalent to the last journey. The British mythology is the last journey that a soul makes as it crosses from the mortal plane into the underworld, and is equivalent to the last journey in the Book of the Dead in the Egyptian mythology, and it goes off to the west. So this is the underworld, and there was a battle between two celestial bodies that is represented on the ground here.
That is absolutely fascinating. I mean, is this, I mean, we're kind of going off on a bit of a tangent here, maybe, but is this connected with the kind of Children of Dawn, which is like this kind of mythological, highly advanced beings who arrived in Wales from a sunken land and kind of founded, almost like civilization, a bit like Hugh did as well. Because the Mabinogion that kind of features the stories of the Children of Dawn. Is there a connection there? Do you think? Do you think the great leaders are, like Math and all these different ones were kind of this was part of this was really their domain. They were all about Gwynedd or Gwynedd. It was where they were doing their thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely connections, and the more we look, the more connections we see. So if we go back a long time, the gap between Ireland and Britain was much smaller when the sea levels are going down. So the mythology of Ireland becomes very similar to the mythology of Britain. And you mentioned Hugh. Well, I think he is very closely associated with the constellation Bootes, which in the Babylonian tradition was Enlil's constellation, and they are all progenitors. And there is a great story across the top of the star maps of Gwynedd, which I believe originated here. And we have the progenitor, whether it's Hugh or Enlil or Bootes. Here is his consort, which is Virgo, and he is managing the plough here, which is joined by the harness to the bull. And this is a large metaphor about creation, about starting humanity, probably after a great cataclysm, which is linking all these ancient stories across the globe.
Hugh is fascinating because he's linked with the plough. That's kind of his symbol, isn't it? But bringing the kind of plough, as in like agriculture, it was thought, although it could have this.
No, that's right. He was actually, that was one of his attributes, and that's directly referring to these two constellations, which are adjacent to each other, Hugh and the plough.
This is absolutely mind-blowing. And so there's a couple of other things I want to get into. This specific thing, we'll do this in a moment, about the St. Mary and the St. Michael churches. But first, before we leave this map, is there a couple of constellations that are just really compelling relating to the landscape and the amount of megalithic sites upon them? I mean, is there a couple of examples we haven't looked at yet we could maybe zoom in on and have a little scan?
Okay, well, let's go over to one we mentioned just a little while ago, and this is one that you and I have actually been to, and you can see here it is next to the plough. So the plough was located on the ground because these peaks very closely represented the stars above, and the stars above are very prominent. Similarly, the stars above for the constellation Corona Borealis are very prominent, but there aren't a lot of prominent ground features in this area, and it needs to be sat in this area to be in the right position relating to the other constellations around it. So what I believe our ancient ancestors did was they created two artificial thresholds here and here, and that created these two permanent lakes. And then they embellished the landscape by adding a number of stone circles and standing stones, and there are a few more at each of these points. And so they marked out the constellation Corona Borealis on the ground. So what you have here is you have a constellation that fits naturally the stars above, a constellation that was actually mapped out on the ground to reflect the stars above, which are very prominent. And in some other areas, and Virgo is a very good example, and also Pisces is a good example, and you can see both of these two constellations Virgo, and Pisces are really quite a long distance off the Milky Way where most of the stars are. So in these constellations, Virgo and Pisces, the stars above that make the shape of the constellation have been chosen to reflect the ground below. And that ground is specific to the star maps of Gwyneth and nowhere else on Earth.
That is interesting. Okay. And I've got just a quick interest. I mean, where is just Snowdon, the peak of like Snowdon, which is connected with Ritter or Ridder? It was one of the giants that we talk about in our mine and Jim's book.
There's Snowdon.
Okay.
And this is the constellation Centaurus.
Okay. And because that always interests me, because I'm sure these giant myths are somehow associated with this. We've got a few that you come up with. And we also went to a place, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Riada or Riada. And that's like the center, the famous center of kind of Wales.
Yeah, it's here somewhere.
Which is in this area. And there's giant remains and stories, and it seems like that's a kind of stronghold. I mean, even though this is, the kind of geodetic, the kind of omphalos of Wales, there's a huge earthwork which you can kind of see the shape of there, which maybe you could look.
We went to this church, didn't we?
That's right, that church, and in the churchyard they've actually got a giant burial there as well.
Around it somewhere
in that area, yeah. So I just wondered, that's not really connected directly with the star map then?
No. There may be a connection. I've been looking into these areas a little bit more. We certainly can go right down into this area with stars that we can identify, but I have yet to really complete that work.
Okay, well, the next thing we wanted to discuss was this strange connection with the Michael churches and the Mary churches. That there's many churches dedicated to these two saints found throughout this area. This is something we've been discussing in sort of private chats. And one of the interesting things with this is that, as a lot of people know, especially in Britain and parts of Europe, churches were often built on old pagan sites, even megalithic sites, even on top of stone circles. Sometimes there's a standing stone in the churchyard still today. And so there's a very ancient choice of location for these churches. And so Hugh has found some strange correlations here. So maybe we could have a look at that and discuss some of that, Hugh.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off some of the constellations for a moment and show you these locations of the St. Mary churches. So, and now we're going to go back and put on some of the churches, because what I have came to understand was that in this area here, which is the main area of the star maps of Gwyneth, the only St. Mary's churches are sited on very ancient sites that reflect the major stars above. And there's only about 10 or 20 St. Mary's churches in this area. Some of them have been rededicated, so you have to be very careful and go back in time to check out their origins. But as a comparison, there's over 20 just in Anglesey, and they don't represent stars. If Anglesey is represented on the star maps of Gwyneth, it's just part of the Milky Way. But actually on the main star map, they only represents the major stars. So we have one at Polaris. We have St. Mary's here at Deneb. We have a sacred. We have a St. Mary's at Vega. I think we've both been to that one together. Deneb is actually on the top of a mountain, but I think there is a sacred circle there. There is a St. Mary's at Altair. I suggested a location for a sacred circle at in the area of Dinas Mawddwy, where Aldebaran, the large star or the very bright star Aldebaran, should be, and Lawrence Main told me where the site was. So that was corroborated. He actually lives at Mawddwy. So Spica is a very large star above, and there is St Mary's there, and the actual town, Tywyn, means star.
Oh, that's interesting. So, and the name Mary, I mean, the St Mary thing, I mean, you've done some, you know, what that name means. Can you tell us a bit about that? Same with the Michael.
Yeah. Going back in time, the English word that we have for Mary goes back to the Hebrews, perhaps, and then back to the Egyptians. But the origin is in the ancient British language, which is now represented by the Welsh language, and it is mare or fair in Welsh, or fawa, and it means brilliance, splendor, radiance, glory, and fair. So a lot of these towns, so there's one there, Llan Bryn Mawr. And there's an interesting story about this town, because this town here called Llan used to be called Llan Bryn Mawr. And when the Victorians made the railways, they put the main station here, and they called it Llan Bryn Mawr. And over time, that has become known as Llan Bryn Mawr. And this town here just as Llan. But the St Mary's Church is in Llan, and the Mare is the Mary. And this represents, on the star maps of Gwynedd, Sirius. And we saw the stone circle at the top there, but this is the St Mary's Church that represents Sirius. So we can do all, and even Fomalhaut, which is in the southern hemisphere over here, is represented by St Mary's Church, which has been rededicated. I could go on. Regulus.
Yes, there's quite a few with Mary then, and okay, let's talk a bit about this Michael connection, because this is of interest to like Earth Mysteries fans, that we have the St Michael line, or the St Michael and Mary energy lines. We also, you believe there's a connection with Michael and Enoch. So can you tell us a bit about that, and look at some of these locations and why these locations you think are important?
Yeah. Okay. So the orange line represents the ecliptic, and that is the apparent path of the sun against the 12 constellations of the zodiac. And above the ecliptic is the northern hemisphere, and below the ecliptic is the southern hemisphere. And on the star maps of Gwynedd, this part of the star map represents the inflow of spirit called Awen from the spiritual plane into the mortal plane, our lives, and then out into the underworld and back out to the west. And this is the great journey of souls. So we're having spirit and well-being coming into the mortal world from our ancient ancestors, and that's what in part Snowdon's name, Yr-Wyddfa, in Welsh means. And then it comes into the mortal world, and then it goes out into the underworld, and that's our last journey as we pass from the mortal world into the underworld and off to the west to join our ancestors and complete the circle. Now, in the book of Revelations and in the book of Enoch, St Michael is the guardian of the the edge, if you like, or the boundary between the mortal world and the underworld. And in the book of Revelations, it is St. Michael who fights the serpent at the end of days, at the edge of the mortal world and the underworld. And what I found on the star maps of Gwynedd is that there are a number of very important St. Michael's churches that actually represent the guardians of this spiritual journey. And we have them. There's one there. There's one there. And there's one there. And my great-great-great-grandfather is buried in that church. And they are the four corners that separates the mortal world with the underworld. And there are St. Michael's at each of those four corners guarding the correct passage of spirit between them. And there is also one in the middle. Now this is very close to, let's put it on again. This area here is the booties plough connection, and I think this St. Michael represents the top of the celestial sphere, very close to Polaris as well. And we've actually been there together, haven't we, Hugh?
That's right.
Do you remember that place?
Yeah, I remember. Very cool. It's a very beautiful area, this part of Wales. I mean, if you do get a chance, and if you get a chance to go with Hugh Evans, you're going to be laughing because he knows all the spots around here. I mean, I've been up to Cadet Idris a couple of times before. Hugh took me up to the area, and we just found so much that was just, surprisingly easy to find. Some of it, others included quite a hike. But yeah, there's a lot going on up there. It's like a real, I think you bringing this to light as like mythology in the landscape is being revealed in modern times. Again, thanks to people like you who are kind of, like the Glastonbury Zodiac Scottish mythos. It's like, people quest around it every month, every change of the kind of astrological year, people go and do ceremonies and things like this, and it's like bringing back these old traditions possibly of what was going on here. And this it could be linked with like what John Michel called the enchantment of the landscape, keeping the land enchanted, keeping all those people in it and all the animal life and the landscape and the sites all energized by this constant awareness and like almost like ceremonial way of thinking as you move around through these different cycles within the land. So it's fascinating that you're bringing this back to light. It's really good work.
There's a couple of more. I was just looking for them then, but I couldn't find them. But there are four more St. Michael's that are important. There is one in this area here. There's one there, and there's two up the top. And I think these two up the top and two at the bottom, they are helping to channel the energy that you were just referring to, this life force, the geomancy. They're focusing the energy into the mortal world and then out again safely towards the west. So that's the role of the St. Michael's. And I would even speculate that St. Michael was Hugh Gadarn, and it was probably a some sort of titular role or relation to Enoch.
That is fascinating. So it's all coming like full circle, like back to where we began our conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. So yeah, well, this is absolutely superb. I think people have got to check out your book. And is there anything else that is we're gonna like sort of close up in the next few minutes and just chat about what you've got coming up. But is there anything else on here you want to show people that really grabbed your attention, or any little bits of new research before we kind of move on?
Well, I think my research is continuing, and the more that I look, the more that I find, and I've not seen anything that quarrels with the hypothesis this far. So for example, in my book, I didn't look for a lot of the southern constellations because I just thought they could not possibly be here. But I found constellations in this area, stars that are impossible to see from this latitude. They're never seen, yet they are accurately reflected in the right place, and they're named. The names of these stars are all explained using the Welsh language, which is the living remnant of ancient British, which I believe was probably a globally spoken language like English is today. And this is the language that was spoken before the great cataclysm, the one before the Noah flood. So we're actually able to talk with and listen to the people's language from, the time of Atlantis. And it's so exciting to see these stars in the southern hemisphere here, which are absolutely invisible at this northerly latitude. It means that when the star maps were being laid out thousands and thousands, 5,000-10,000 years ago, people had already circumnavigated the globe and knew exactly where all the stars were and were able to communicate that to each other. And it's almost a proof on the ground here in front of us. Same in the up here. We've just discussed the southern constellations. We have Centaurus here, and Crux, which is the Southern Cross, represented on the ground in Gwynedd, and Snowdon is actually our nearest star. So the nearest star to our sun is Alpha Centauri, and that is Snowdon on the star maps. And the St. Mary's Church is down here at Beth Gellert.
Okay,
so there's so much here.
There's so much there. That's amazing.
Someone sent me a postcard just 2 days ago. In fact, I'll reveal it was Lawrence, Maine, and he referred to a river valley over here. This is the Conway River, and on this postcard it says Foss Anothen. It's a picture of this valley here. I wonder if it'll pull up there it is. It's absolutely beautiful, mystical valley, and it's called the Fairies Gorge or the Fairies Valley or something like that. But we had a discussion about this name, Foss Anothen, and Foss is a ravine, but it's also a moat. So if we look back here on the star maps of Gwynedd, this is actually the ecliptic. So the ecliptic and the 12 constellations of the zodiac are a moat of energy around the equator of the celestial heavens, if you like. So this place is perfectly located to reflect the ecliptic, because the River Conway here, you can see it says River Conway, that is part of the ecliptic, of the rivers that make up the ecliptic. And Anothen is the abyss. And in ancient British mythology, the abyss is the underworld. So this is the moat of the abyss. And on this side of the ecliptic, we have the underworld, which is the abyss. And on the inside of the ecliptic, we have the mortal world. So, I mean, even just 2 days ago, I found this location, and it's correctly reported on the star maps of Gwynedd.
Well, thanks for showing us all that, Hugh. That was really compelling to see that and described in such detail. I really, really like that. You've got a YouTube channel called The Origin of the Zodiac, I believe. Yep. And you can check out Hugh's work on there. He's done some very interesting videos. Is there any, you've done a couple of new videos. Do you want to just explain what a couple of them are to get people interested?
Yeah. I am continuing my research. So, for example, the origin of the unicorn is explained using the Welsh language, which represents ancient British. The origin of the names of the planets, they're all explained using Welsh. And the origin of other myths like the Eye of Horus, for example, and the meaning of Atlantis. The word Atlantis is actually a compound Welsh word, and it means sacred origins, or it's where we've come from, sort of thing. So it's all very exciting to be able to use this means of getting an insight back in time as to what people meant. It's been like these clues have been all around us for all these years.
Because one of the things you do as well, which maybe we could like throw a couple of examples in it, is you email me quite a bit saying, the Welsh translation this is definitely Welsh. All these different names of places from around the world, like Cappadocia, the Tepe name of Göbekli Tepe, and you find this Welsh kind of origin. This is absolutely fascinating to me, because we had Ross Broadstock. He's obsessed by the Welsh language. He's found the connections with Egyptian hieroglyphs. So give us a couple of examples. You came up with like Cappadocia, for instance, and you got Tepe. So what are their meanings when you email me about these?
Okay. Well, I watched your video with Andrew Collins on Cappadocia, and I was just listening along and enjoying the features being explained. And Andrew said that the mountain was called Argaeth Dar, and I just immediately had a belief that this was a Welsh name, because Dar is very common in Welsh. It just means good, and good morning is Bore Da, or good night is Nos Da. So Argaeth Dar, I didn't know exactly what Argaeth meant, but then I looked it up in the dictionaries that I use, and it is an embankment or a protector. To enclose, Argai, to enclose, Argaid, shutting in. And Dar means good, but it can also mean goods, and like we would use goods and services, your things. So to enclose, to shut in your things. And this mountain has been hollowed out, and this is where people were living underground, presumably with all the things they wanted to save, because it was the safe place to be. So it's just can't be a coincidence that this mountain has been named like this. And the town very close to it was called Gorem, and a Corem in Welsh is a meeting place. So there's lots of things going on along like this. And even Tepe, a tep is a projecting rock, and a pe will turn that noun into an agent with a purpose. So Tepe in Welsh is chosen rock for a purpose. So these names have descended down the millennia from the time of Göbekli Tepe. Tepe comes from the word tep, which is a rock protrusion, and pe, which is creates an agent noun from the subject. So a tepe is something, a rock projection that does something, and it is not likely to be a coincidence that these particular mounds around Haran, which is again translatable using Welsh as the capital of the star map above us, Ar is upon, and that's why we have the plough, which is an Arad in Welsh, or the Ursa Major, which is the Great Bear, which is an Arth, and even Ursa has R in it. So Haran has the R component, meaning above us, and An is to contain, which so Haran is the place where they were monitoring the night sky above us. And all of these peaks around Haran are called tepe. In fact, there's probably many areas of Turkey where they have tepes, and maybe all of these peaks represent a star map that is in that region. that are all visible or connected from Haran. I don't know.
It could well be. I mean, they've discovered all these sites around Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe now, which is very close to the Haran Plain, Haran area. So something that myself and Andrew Collins and JJ are looking into, because we're convinced that these weren't just randomly placed, these sites. But maybe I'll get you all the GPS coordinates and we could do some work on that, because
I'd love to do that. And
yeah, I'm
I'm
sure we can
looking
find
forward to going out there this summer.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, definitely. And just for and also, so I think we'll wrap this up. Thanks, Hugh. I really appreciate your time, your research.
Thank you.
And we're
It's
going
been
to
a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
absolutely, and we're going to have Hugh as a speaker at the Megalithomania conference, which takes place on the 7th and 8th of May, 2022 in Glastonbury in the town hall. You can get tickets for that at megalithomania.co.uk. And Hugh, no doubt, is going to be out and about in the landscape. I'm sure he could be persuaded to do some trips out to this area as well. But I think coming to the conference, meeting Hugh, and we could plan some things. I think it's inevitable, really, that has to happen. And Hugh's also going to be involved in the Lay Hunters Moot, which takes place later in May. The Lay Hunters are going to be at Megalithomania, so you can meet them all there if people are interested. That's out in like the Herefordshire area, I believe. Like the area, the Alfred Watkins area. And yeah, so we look forward to that. So Hugh's going to give us an update. He's going to have new research ready for the conference. And this is really his first kind of proper public lecture, although he's been researching and discussing this and making videos, obviously written an amazing book as well. So also Hugh's website is originofthezodiac.com, where you can find out more information. You can get the book. It's got Kindle versions and print versions. And do check out his YouTube channel, which is like, I believe, Origin of the Zodiac. You can Google that and find that, and I'll put some links anyway in the text box below. So brilliant. So we look forward to seeing you in May, Hugh.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, Hugh.
Thanks a lot. Okay, well, take care, Hugh, and we'll say bye to everybody. Thanks, Megalithomaniacs. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.
Please remember to subscribe to Megalithomania and Hugh's channel. If you can become a patron, Megalithomania has that set up as well. And yeah, we've got a lot more to share over the next few months and the next couple of years. So take care, Megalithomaniacs. We'll see you soon.